Washington has always been a city of power, but power rarely lives in public speeches or press conferences. It lives in private rooms, closed-door meetings, and most dangerously, in emails never meant to be seen. This story begins not with a whistleblower stepping forward, but with a quiet digital breach that sent shockwaves through the heart of American politics. Late one evening, journalists across multiple newsrooms received the same anonymous message. No introduction, no explanation, just a secure link and a short sentence. These emails explain everything. At first, many ignored it. Washington gets anonymous tips every day. But within hours, editors realized something was different. The documents were authentic. The email chains were real. And the people involved were some of the most powerful figures in U.S. politics. What made these emails explosive was not just what they said, but how casually they said it. Conversations about public policies sounded very different behind closed doors. Politicians who publicly opposed certain bills were privately supporting them. Leaders who claimed to fight for ordinary Americans were discussing strategies that clearly favored elite donors and corporate interests. The contrast between public promises and private words was impossible to ignore. One email thread revealed discussions about manipulating the timing of major announcements to influence public opinion. Advisors talked openly about distracting the public with cultural debates, while controversial economic decisions were pushed through quietly. These were not conspiracy theories. These were direct messages, written in plain language, assuming no one outside the circle would ever read them. Another set of emails focused on election strategy, not illegal actions, but deeply uncomfortable tactics. Voter demographics were discussed not as citizens, but as numbers to be influenced, redirected, or discouraged. Certain communities were described as manageable losses if it meant securing power elsewhere. For many Americans, this was the moment trust began to crack. The most shocking part was how normalized this language was. There was no sense of urgency or secrecy in the tone. These emails read like routine office communication. That normality suggested something far more disturbing. This wasn't a rare lapse in judgment. It was standard practice. As news outlets began verifying and publishing selected portions, Washington went into damage control mode. Spokespeople rushed to issue statements, calling the emails taken out of context or misinterpreted. Some claimed the messages were old and no longer relevant. Others refused to comment entirely, but the public had already seen enough. Political allies quickly turned defensive. Opponents went on the offensive. Cable news ran endless panels. Social media exploded with screenshots, analysis, and outrage. Hashtags trended globally. For a brief moment, it felt like transparency had finally broken through the walls of power. But behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. Emergency meetings were held. Legal teams were mobilized. Cybersecurity protocols were reviewed. The question was no longer just who leaked the emails, but what else might come out. Because if these messages existed, there were surely more. One particularly damaging exchange involved coordination between political figures and private industry representatives. While no explicit laws were broken in the emails themselves, the tone suggested an uncomfortable closeness. Policies were being discussed alongside donor expectations. Public interest and private gain appeared dangerously intertwined. For ordinary citizens, this was not just political drama. It felt personal. People recognized their own struggles in the policies being discussed so casually. Healthcare costs, wages, housing, education, these weren't abstract topics. They were daily realities. And seeing leaders treat them like chess pieces triggered anger across party lines. Some supporters argued that this was simply how politics works, that private conversations are always more blunt than public ones. And that may be true, but the emails removed the illusion that leaders were unaware of the consequences of their decisions. They knew, they discussed them, and they moved forward anyway. As investigations were called for, another uncomfortable truth emerged. Leaks rarely change systems. They expose them, but exposure alone doesn't guarantee reform. Washington has survived scandals before. The machine adapts. Public attention moves on. New crises replace old ones. Still, something about these emails lingered. Perhaps it was the timing. Perhaps it was the accumulation of public frustration. Or perhaps it was simply the raw honesty of the messages. Whatever the reason, trust took a measurable hit. Polls showed declining confidence not just in individual politicians, but in the political system itself. The anonymous source never revealed their identity. Some speculated it was a disgruntled staffer. Others believed it was a coordinated internal power move. The truth may never be known. But the motive seemed clear. Someone wanted the public to see how decisions were really made. In the weeks that followed, reforms were promised. Transparency initiatives were announced. Stronger cybersecurity measures were introduced. But critics remained skeptical. They had heard similar promises before. What these leaked emails ultimately revealed was not just hypocrisy or strategy. They revealed distance. Distance between leaders and the people they represent. Distance between words spoken on camera and words typed in private. And distance between power and accountability. Washington was shocked, not because corruption was discovered, but because it was documented so clearly. Because the mask slipped, even if only for a moment. And once people see behind the curtain, it becomes impossible to forget. The emails may fade from headlines, but their impact remains. They serve as a reminder that democracy depends not just on elections, but on vigilance. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come from speeches or debates. Sometimes it comes from leaked emails that were never meant to be read.